Good evening, everybody. It's an honor and a pleasure for me as the Dean of Vesalius College to welcome you all to this occasion. First of all, I would like to welcome our speaker, the Belgian Foreign Minister, Vanackere. Thanks for coming. We've quite a lot of distinguished guests today. I will only name a few. So we've got General Andries, who's the military representative at the Military Committee of the European Union. We've got the Ambassador of Jordan, who's here with us today, Dr. Montazer Okla Al-Zoui, if I pronounce it correctly. Thank you. We've got Mr. Van den Boogaard, who's the Honorary Consul of Liberia to Belgium and Luxembourg. We've got a strong delegation from the Saudi Arabian embassy led by Dr. Malki. And there's also a strong delegation from the Taipei representative office led by the Ambassador David Lim. Obviously, there are also many students here, despite the fact that this week is the midterm exam week of Vesalius College. Vesalius College was founded 25 years ago by Boston University and by the Free University of Brussels, the VUB. So we're celebrating 25 years this academic year. Vesalius College offers 3 bachelor programs in business studies, international affairs, and in communications. We've also got a sub-program which is called European Peace and Security Studies, which is unique in the world, I might say, and it focuses on the relationship between EU and NATO in an international environment of peacekeeping and military operation. It is within that program that we have this lecture series. Before I give the floor to Bart Schutter, the president of the Institute for European Studies, I would like to make one more announcement. So I'm proud to announce today that next year Vesalius College will start with a new program. A new program for which we just received accreditation. It's a master program. So for the first time in history, after 25 years, Vesalius College will offer a Master of Science in European Union policy. I'm sure you will hear much more about it in the coming weeks. And now I would like to give the floor to Bart de Schutter, Professor de Schutter, who is the director of the IES and who will introduce our speaker, Steven Vanackere. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bert. Needless to say that the Institute for European Studies of the Vrije Universiteit Brussel is equally very happy and proud to be co-organizer of this lecture series. There are 2 main reasons. One reason is because we do have a long-standing and very fruitful cooperation between our institute and Vesalius College, be it in teaching, be it in research cooperation. And second, even more tonight, because the main theme of your series, organized by Joachim Koeks, our colleague, relates to peace and security issues in the global world, including, of course, the role of the European Union. And if we look at the main focus of the research of the IES, which is the Schutter Center of Excellence and counts more than 40 researchers now, is indeed the EU in an international setting, which means that we are partners in this type of undertaking. And as a matter of fact, next year IES will organize its second international conference under the general theme of the European Union in international affairs. So we're extremely privileged today to have our Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs, Steven Vanackere, among us. You all have his CV on the documents in your seats. He's an example of multidisciplinarity, with degrees in law, degrees in economics, even a bachelor's degree in political science. So a man of all seasons who, in the last couple of years, after a start in the financial world, but his heart goes to politics. First as a cabinet member, member of parliament, member of the Flemish government, and since I think 2007 or 8 member of the federal government, and the last couple of years in the portfolio of foreign affairs. I think it's fair to say that in the statements our minister has made within international agreements such as the Council of Ministers, but particularly also in the General Assembly lately of the United Nations, he has shown a very strong vision, and in that line continues the line of action of some of his very respected Belgian statesmen before him, proving that small countries today can play a role in peace and security, and that small states are listened to. Internally, from a political angle, it looks like your term may come to an end. But that means that the opening for next term is equally there. And I do hope that with the next government coming up, we can have a continuity of the political visions and the political lines you have been drawing in the last 2 years. Mr. Minister, with great humbleness and happiness, may I invite you to take the floor on Europe in the world, contemporary problems and potential solutions. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Excellencies, Mr. President, Mr. Dean, and of course, first and foremost, dear students, and with a special mention for all of you who are in a more stressful week than at other occasions, facing exams, and recognizing very much and appreciating your presence here. Man for all seasons, you said, Professor. Yes, I've had degrees in different areas, law, economics, politics, but I would have needed to have done something in medicine or engineering in order to really be a homo universalis. And to mention that fact, Vesalius is one of my favorite humanists. Vesalius had a tremendous sense of curiosity that brought him not only to the boundaries of the human body, but also to big areas in the European Union. He was a traveler as well, and he understood that it is only by exchange that you can learn. And in that sense, I feel privileged to be here tonight. But you invited me today to share some thoughts under the title Europe in the World, Core Challenges and Possible Solutions. When mentioning core challenges, there are a lot of them. And of course, it has been a fundamental issue that has been addressed innumerable times in this city or elsewhere in the world in the past decades. And it is a question that still remains very, very valid and relevant in the minds of Europeans and many people in the world, not only for EU watchers around the Schuman roundabout. Because, to give you simply a couple of examples, following the developments around the Mediterranean or in the Middle East, people ask, where is Europe? When new and fragile democracies at the eastern side of our continent struggle to get rid of the demons of the past and try to find their place in a new order of nations, people ask whether Europe can help and what role it wishes to play in these developments. And confronted with the fallout of the largest economic and financial crisis since the Second World War, and in the face of the rising economic powers of the emerging economies, people are looking at the more pronounced role of the European Union in a global economic governance, and they ask, where is Europe? I just give you these few examples to illustrate my point that the elementary question of the title of this lecture is and remains very relevant. And today I would like to speak to you as a national Minister of Foreign Affairs, a Belgian Minister of Foreign Affairs, who has been member for almost 2 years of the Council of the EU, but also as a minister who had the chance to preside some of its segments during the Belgian presidency of the EU in 2010, when I presided my colleagues, be it in the Council for Trade or in the General Affairs Council, which has to do with enlargement policies, for example. So I will try to witness and give some testimony in this double experience capacity, if you will. Almost 2 years after the entry into force of the Treaty of Lisbon, I would like to deliver some personal remarks on the global challenges for the EU and, of course, possible solutions. And I will, at the end, highlight a number of areas where I think the EU would have to organize itself much better in order to have more impact on the world scene. But, okay, first things first, let's try to summarize some of the major challenges the EU, the world, is confronted with. One can always discuss when making lists, but I have distinguished 5 situations, phenomena, challenges, including a number of issues that are absolutely also, I suppose, in the minds of young people of today, looking at the 21st century and being aware that some of the challenges of your forefathers present themselves in completely different angles than it was the case for your forefathers. First challenge I want to mention is we need to organize the new global governance. It's easily said, but let's not forget that the global governance of this planet has been organized after World War II, taking into account those who have had won a tremendous and awful war, and that since then a lot has not changed in terms of the architecture of some of our institutional international organizations. Take a look at the Security Council. It has been adapted slightly, but it has not been adapted fundamentally. Also, the so-called Bretton Woods institutions, World Bank, IMF, they pretty much resemble how they looked when they first got started. And by now, the world has changed. Are we able to tackle these changes and accept that not only the recent financial and economic crisis, but also the completely different shift of new interdependence in the world has altered the balance of power in the world and has created an ever stronger economic and monetary interdependence. You see that heavily indebted Western nations, some of them with a huge trade deficit, are struggling to find the right answers to the economic crisis. And although the emerging countries depend on prosperous export markets, they seem to be relatively unaffected by the crisis, thanks to some new domestic demand, even if today one has to see that also growth in the emerging countries is slowing down. The effects of this new situation with emerging countries knocking at the door of the world global governance architecture has already changed the governance in the sense that in 2008 G20 convened for the first time at the level of heads of states of government, and not G7, not G8, but G20 proclaimed itself in 2009 as the premier forum for international economic coordination. The governing structures of IMF and World Bank are in a process of overhaul in order to take into account the increased economic weights of the BRICS. And I tell you no secret by saying that this move will of course not leave the position of a country like Belgium or that of other Western European mid-sized countries untouched. Here, the globalization and the changing centers of gravity are clearly perceptible, and EU cannot stay idle and wait for things to happen. The pressure is mounting for the Eurozone to get its act together and to reorganize also its external representation in the international financial institutions. We're not there yet, by far, but more and more policymakers are convinced that the EU and the Eurozone in particular need appropriate means to be heard.